Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about uncommon leadership. I think so many of us after this pandemic has had to realize and then rethink the way we have previously done things. What are we doing that's holding us back? Why are we not at our greatest? What's our fear? Why can't we do it? What's that pain stopping us from reaching our full potential? My guest today, Ben Newman, is a highly regarded performance coach, international speaker, and best-selling author whose client includes Fortune 500 companies around the world, business executive, sales organization, and professional athletes in the NFL, NBA, to name a few. He serves as a mental conditioning coach for his 18-time national champion Alabama Crimson Tide football team, and his work with players from the last three Super Bowl champion teams. That says a lot. Someone who's worked in that position will understand from watching the athlete, the daily challenge they have to go through, to going on to individuals, to understanding what makes us different. Why are the athletes very successful, but normal individuals still struggle to make strides? In 2021, Ben's highly anticipated new book, Uncommon Leadership, will be released, and we'll be talking about that book and to understand why he's written this book this year and what lessons we can learn from reading this book. He has various clients around the world, but I'm just going to give you a few examples, such as Microsoft, in the United States Army. Honestly, just so many of them. I just don't want to go through the list because it's just unbelievable applauding. And one of the key things about Ben is that he's still a family man. In everything he does, he's still a family man. He's married with his wife and two beautiful kids. But today's conversation is to get you from that comfort zone to the next level, to shake you up a bit. So if you're looking for that challenge in your life, if you're looking for that change, stay tuned and listen to Ben Newman's conversation as he discusses what is holding you back. Why are you feeling, I can't do this? Meet Ben. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, I have the amazing Ben Newman here with me. So his experience is something I needed to tap into today, and I want you all to listen today, because they'll be asking very vital questions from his bio of what he's done, and some of the questions of when you look at his Instagram page, and I really encourage you all to look at it. I'll leave a tagline here at the end of it of his Instagram page. There are key things Ben talks about, and those things are things that, especially people who are going through a difficult time with the pandemic, not knowing, these are things I think will help you to reassess yourself and find your joy again. But before we go into all of that, let's speak to Ben. Ben, how are you today?
And I am doing fantastic. It is great to be with you and all your listeners, and I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, thank you so much. So if I ask, where are you calling in from? Because I always like to ask that nosy question, because this Painless Universal has become a global thing, and be surprised where our guests are from. So where are you dialing in from today?
So I am born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. So I am at my my office in St. Louis, and so we got the window out here, and it's supposed to be spring. It was snowing yesterday, so I don't know what's going on, but I'm excited to be with all of you. And I have to highlight something really, really quick, because I know you mentioned so many things in the bio that you wanted people to hear.
Yes.
But I believe it's the challenge and adversity that I've been through in my life, the great mentors and coaches that I've had to pick me up off the mat of life when I felt like I couldn't move any further, that really give me the opportunity to be with all of you. Not all the things that I know you wanted to highlight. And I also want to mention, I still have two coaches. I read books every day. I have mentors. So even though I'm a coach, I'm right there with all of you. I'm in this fight with you, and I'm just fighting to get better every single day.
Wow, it's good to know, because I think a lot of people get to a certain level, and I had my mentor, he also said the same to me, is that people get to this level and they forget. So what they forget is actually it's not actually, it's hard getting on top, but it's even harder staying on top. So you need those mentors to keep reminding you and keep guiding you through the process. And I love how you just started it, that it's not just my greatness that got me here, but also it's my downside, my pain, and my, everything I've been to, my challenges. It's also what's keeping me going. And I appreciate you starting it that way. So before we even go into all your success and some of your challenges, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and who is Ben?
So I had to grow up fast. We could talk background about jobs and things that I've had to do, but I had to grow up fast. A lot of my mentors call me an old soul. And so my parents were divorced when I was 6 months old. I never knew my parents together. My mother, a handful of years later, was diagnosed with a rare muscle disease called amyloidosis. And many people don't know, but we each have amyloids in our muscles. If you have an excess of amyloids, you would have this disease, amyloidosis. At the time of my mother's diagnosis, there were only two hospitals in the United States treating the disease, the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and the Boston Medical Center. And my mother's team of doctors here in St. Louis chose for her to go to Boston. And she goes to Boston and meets with a woman by the name of Dr. Martha Skinner. And Dr. Skinner proceeded to tell my mother, you're only the second woman under 40 years old we've ever seen or heard of having amyloidosis. And they gave my mother 2 to 4 years to live. Wow. And in that moment, just like so many of us, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's been your own challenges that you've been through, because I know I'm not the only one with a story, how we respond to challenge and adversity determines the story that we write. And I learned that from my mom. My mom in this moment ended up taking out, after she hears this, 2 to 4 years to live, right? You don't know how many days you have left. And she takes out an old blue Mead notebook, maybe like you used to have in school, and maybe yours was another color. And she wrote down, beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with the disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. And my mother's purpose was that she would continue to lead her two boys regardless of her pain. And even my mother's last year living, we had 24-hour nursing care in our house. Literally, they came into the house. I'm a 7-year-old boy. I remember they'd take all the belongings out of my mother's TV room, replace it with the makings of a hospital. Mm-hmm. And my mother would come every night with an IV stand in tow. Sometimes it took one nurse, sometimes two. She'd look down this long hallway, knowing that the head of the dining room table was at the end of that hallway. And she'd put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And she'd sit at the head of that dining room table and she'd look at my older brother, Drew, and say, Drew, how was your day at school? And then she would pan over to the left and she'd look me dead square in the eyes. And she would say, honey, how was your day at school? And I always got the honey because I was the younger son, Ann. But I learned in watching my mother fight, even though she passed 11 days before my 8th birthday, she's the greatest champion of life I've ever known. My mother taught me about conviction and passion and to have fire and to make the most of every single day. And she taught me the greatest life lesson. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. And my mother's influence, how she battled amyloidosis, it's what still leads me to this day. And so for me, the blessing of being with you and your listeners, or whether I'm speaking or coaching, is to help people connect to what drives you internally. And that's what's guided me in my life.
I love that what you just said, Ben. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live. And I think a lot of people miss that, because even myself with a chronic illness, I learned that very saying myself, I realized that I could feel sorry for myself, I could feel pity, I could do all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, the one thing I can't take it away, is that I still need to live. I still need to give to society. I still need to look after my kids. So however I choose to do it, I better take away that pity from myself. So hearing it from you and from your mother showing that sign, I really so glad you said that, because so many people right now, especially during this pandemic time, really found themselves lost in the sense of what do I do next? And there's your mother, who had this very challenging circumstances, still found a purpose in herself. But coming back to you, with that, how did you go on to build such a successful career with your parents' divorce and your mom passing before your 8th birthday, 11 days before your 8th birthday? How did you go on to say, And I'm going to be something make something out of this life.
Well, as I learned from my mom with that greatest life lesson, we all we all have a choice. And so for you, I admire your strength with what you've been through, recognizing you're an example for your children,
Yeah.
right? Your children are watching how you respond. Individuals, everybody's battled COVID, right? Everybody's experienced it in some way. How you've responded to COVID or how you've responded to other challenge or work. Our children watch our every move. I'm living proof that the little boys and girls do grow up. And I'm a testament to when the lessons are strong, they stick with you forever. And so for me, those strong lessons that I learned have made me realize that what does no really mean? Yeah. Right? No, if I decide to be strong enough, is going to help me find a way to keep fighting to get to the yes. And so for me, it was always perspective. I thought, if this is what I've seen with these two eyes before I turned 8 years old, like if I'm in the business world and somebody tells me no, like it's really not that big of a deal. I'll go call somebody else. Yeah. I'll go keep moving. And so I think it was a combination of having a tremendous amount of resilience and a relentless mindset because of what I saw. But I was also very blessed that I've had great mentors. I've had great coaches. My 2 high school basketball coaches, Ann, are still great friends of mine. I played for these guys like 25 years ago. Yet these are men who influence my life. They're characters in books that I write. I've taken them on trips. I still spend so much time with them. I was texting with one of them this morning. That was my high school basketball coach. But those were individuals who were there for me to help teach me those life lessons. So whether it's been coaches or mentors, once again, back to you can share things that I've done, but I feel like I've just been blessed to have people who say, I love you, I support you, and keep going. And I encourage everybody, when you feel like you have nothing left in the tank, shift your perspective back to what you've been through. That's probably tougher. And you know it, or at least let me speak for me. Sometimes as adults, we build in our mind, we take something that's negative when we build a skyscraper in our imagination and we make it way worse than it actually is.
Yes.
And I always encourage people, reframe and shift back to what was actually that significant adversity. So you realize this is nothing. I'm going to choose to fight through this.
It's very true. It's true. We all do that. And it's a big mistake. I think that leads me to your book that's just coming out in 2021, Uncommon Leadership. So what led you to write this book, and when can we get it?
So the book will release on August 3rd. And so I do so much work in the United States, football, which is different over in the UK. And so football here in the United States, I do a tremendous amount of work. So training camp is around August the 3rd. That's when it starts. And so the publisher said, we're releasing this book during training camp. So even though I do so much work in the corporate world, but sports as well, that's when they wanted to release it. And it's 11 ways that the greatest leaders lead. And so it's 11, I call them champions of life, leaders that show us how uncommon leadership can be. And you alluded to it earlier. I think so many people, they want the easy way. Look at all of the amazing interviews that you've conducted over all these years, Ann, right? And you probably hear people tell stories of their work with somebody and leading some. And we hear so often somebody tells you, Ann, I want it so bad, and here's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And I'm direct because I care that much. Your words are powerful. They paint your vision. Yeah. But your action, that's what tells the real story. Yeah. And what I found in working with some very high-level leaders, and it comes out in the book through their stories, is that the most uncommon leaders, the ones who are willing to do the things that other people don't want to talk about, they can't see, the ones who truly put in the work, they're uncommon because they don't want to find the easy way. They recognize that the easy way does not allow them to have their greatest impact. And so it was fun for me to be able to highlight all these individuals who have made a difference in my life in an effort to share those lessons with others to help them on their journey of being uncommon. And it's not just for the leader who's running a business. It's the leader of a sports team. And maybe this is new information, everybody's leading themselves. So everybody's a leader, right? So even if it's just you by yourself, we're all leaders and we're all an example for somebody.
So have you noticed a difference? Because my son plays ice hockey, for example, and I see there's a difference when he wasn't playing because of the pandemic, but there's a discipline, there's a drive, there's a hunger. What can you tell us what that separation with, especially with these athletes, how do they get that common gift? I'll probably say it, or probably they don't have it, they just put the effort in. You tell me.
Well, where I believe it all starts, and it's very common when you speak to athletes, business professionals at the highest possible level, is they all have what I call the burn. And it's this underlying fire that lies inside of them. And so that's why our show is called The Burn, is because I found in talking to so many people that lots of coaches, they talk about why and they talk about purpose, which is so important. But they forget to identify for each individual, because we're all different. There's something unique about you. There's a fire. There's a reason why Anne's son is going to choose to say, hey, Mom, can I stay a little later and go around the rink just a few more times? Hey, Mom, can I stay later and get, and I believe it's our opportunity as leaders to say, why do you want to do that? Not just, sure, honey, no problem. It's why. And then we can figure out there's a burn inside your son. He may say something to you that says, Mom, I just have it in me from watching you that the way that you fought, I'm going to make the most of every day, whether I'm playing hockey or I'm doing something in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And so the burn is what ignites that why and that purpose that then causes you to do the extra, to do the uncommon things, to go and compete to find what your best level looks like. And the highest performers have that. They're clear on what their burn is. And oftentimes, if people are struggling, they're not connecting enough, or they haven't spent enough time to understand what is that real deep-rooted fire and burn that's going to cause you to say, I'm going to make the most of today, even if yesterday wasn't very good, if yesterday was even terrible, or if yesterday was really good. See, this is the key. The highest performers, they're not seduced by success. So even if yesterday was amazing, you had the greatest day you ever could have imagined in business. Yes. Well, so you take today off because yesterday was great. If you're connected to that burn, it doesn't matter what you did yesterday, what you think you're going to do tomorrow. You're going to own that opportunity to be your best every day.
And I love what you said, that burn lies inside you, because actually that was something I was going to ask you, the why, the purpose, the reason you push yourself, and you just really talked about it. So I have to go into this bit, because this one, I was looking at your Instagram page and I thought, this is very true. What are the 3 things holding us back? Because I think people need to know.
The 3 words that hold us back?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's let it go. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's what holds you back. You have to choose to let it go. I remember, I'll share this with you. I was doing some consulting work in Orlando, Florida, for a financial firm. And I was getting ready to leave, and I was with one of the leaders in the organization. Another one of the leaders comes running down the hallway. His name was JB. And JB says, Ben, have you seen the new Tony Robbins documentary, I Am Not Your Guru? And I said, no, I haven't seen it, but you're really excited. It sounds like something I need to watch. He says, you got to watch it today. Like, do you have time today? And I said, well, it just so happens I'm getting to the airport early. And so I'll watch it. He says, it's free on Netflix. So I get to the airport. You could picture this. I sit down at the bar. I order a salad and a glass of water. I open up my iPad and I click the button for Netflix, Tony Robbins, I'm Not Your Guru. And 19 minutes into this video, Tony Robbins asked this 19-year-old girl to stand up. There's thousands of people in this audience. And Tony Robbins asked her the question, what holds you back? And she says, my dad did this, my dad did that, my dad did this, my dad did that, my dad did that. And Tony Robbins takes a step back. He pauses and he says, just to break it up a little bit, did your father ever do anything positive in your life? And she kind of smiles and says, yeah, he did some things that were positive, but my dad did this, my dad did that, my dad. Tony Robbins steps back again and looks at her and says, what if I shared with you there's an opportunity to shift your perspective? What if I shared with you that everything you went through with your father has made you who you are, and it has given you the strength to do whatever you want to do in your life? And Anne, I'm watching this with tears pouring down my face. the bartender is looking at me like this dude isn't even drinking and he's crying. And I'm crying because Tony Robbins was not just talking to that 19-year-old girl. Tony Robbins was talking to me. I sat there as a 37-year-old man, knowing that there were things that had happened with my father that were holding me back from really going all in my life. I was already speaking. I was already coaching. I was already doing so many of these things, but we all have things that hold us back. And so I think for everybody, we have to address those things. It took me a month to call my father. I called my father and I said, Dad, there's a couple things I want to talk about. Number one, I think there have been periods of time in my life where I've been too hard on you. And for that, I'm sorry. And I said, secondly, you and I have been through a lot of negative. We've been through some positive, but we've been through a lot of negative things. But I now recognize that everything that we've been through has made me the man that I am today. And I thank you and I love you. And there was this long pause. And my father said, I think I'm going to have to sit here in my chair for a while. I never thought I'd receive a phone call like this. And so I always share that story to let people know that no matter what you see on Instagram, no matter what you perceive something to be, I have challenges and struggles, things I'm working. That's why I got 2 coaches, because I'm high maintenance. But for me, you know, we all have to choose at some point in time, if there's something, fears, doubts, uncertainty, something holding you back, choose to let it go.
Wow. I think everyone could agree on this quote, these 3 words, let it go, because I think you are absolutely spot on. I've seen so many people complain to me about either family or this, and I always say to them, what's the worst that happened? Make an effort, try, and if it's not going anywhere, then just go. But you just summed it in the right way, and that is so true. We all need to have that. But how can we let it go? I mean, did it take you courage? What led you to say, okay, you watched that Tony Robbins, did you? What led you to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to call my father. What led you to do this? How did you find that strength?
I really believe, I mean, it was, you know, in the moment, it was Tony Robbins' words, right? You know, so often, you know, you could go on to church on Sunday and it seems like, I don't know about you, it seems like the sermon was always written for me on that day, right? And so, you know, Tony Robbins, it was in the moment, that's what I needed to hear. But I had to be willing to say, I don't, just because I'm a coach, I don't know it all. So if somebody says, this is a great documentary, I'm going to watch it. So I think sometimes we have to be open to reading and growing and surrounding yourself with things that maybe help you see things differently. And in that moment, in that day, in that video, the way Tony Robbins said that, it hit me and it said, that's it. I'm not going to let some of the pain, the anger that I still have from things that happened 30 years ago, 20 years, I just got to let it go. And so I think we have to do it on our own time, but I think there has to be an openness to self-improvement and recognizing that we all have things that we struggle with.
Getting away. I think that also brings me to my next question, which is about trust the process. And you said that's no longer enough. I think you hear so many people, especially if you know, from my African community, for example, something will happen and they will just say, trust the process, just believe it will get better. But you're saying that is no longer enough. We need to work on the process. We need to do more, not just sit back and just say, oh, it's okay. So what did you mean? I mean, I love that, because it really highlights what is going on within my community, which I think is very important. That I keep telling my family and my community, guys, I do understand what you're saying, trust the process, but I think you need to do more.
Yeah, so I like to say, attack the process, right? And so it's one thing to say, right, Ann, you and I could go into business together and you can highlight, right, it could have been your idea and you planted the seed, and maybe you see something in me, we could do great things together, and you bring me along and you could share, Ben, this is the process, this is how I've done it. So I could say, well, Ann, look at your success. I trust the process of what you've done, but that trust only gets you so far. We have to commit to the process. You have to be willing to take action. I can't just say, Ann, I trust you. I have to say, Ann, based upon your belief in me, what are the action steps you want me to take? Like, if you wanted to partner with me, what do I need to do on a daily basis in order to grow this company together? And too many people, they get caught up in these buzzwords, trust them. So they just say these things, but they forget to put the action behind it. And you can't just say it and expect it to happen. People have to remember, you have to have a willingness to do the work.
Yes. And what about standards over feeling? Because most of the time when we're trying to do work, we leave. I'm sorry, I'm asking you all this question because I think
I love it.
Your insight is so important that we just don't leave things behind, because there's something you really talk about, standards over feeling. I think so many times people go into a workplace, they get so emotional about it, and that emotion takes away from their ability to perform at their best level. So I don't know if you could explain how we could address that issue, which many people are dealing with at the moment.
Absolutely. So that's actually one of the concepts that I write about in the book, and it's very popular in the business and sports world. And so I always say, don't allow your feelings to dictate how you show up. You have to identify the standard, that process that causes you to win. And then you have to choose to follow through with owning that standard. Make the right decisions every day so that you win every single day. And for everybody, you could say, okay, highlight for you the period of time when you've been most successful. And then we can look at it, but then we got to pull it down and we got to say, okay, what did I do that drove that success? Okay, was it a certain number of phone calls, emails, text messages? Was I active in the pursuit of business? Was there something well, that was a standard that you have that, when I do that, I get results. Mm-hmm. Rather than allowing your feelings to dictate how you show up. And I alluded to that earlier when I said, well, what I sold yesterday doesn't impact what I do today. What I think I'm going to do, hey, Ann, Friday is going to be amazing. Well, it's Wednesday. So I got to win Wednesday first, and then I got to win Thursday. I can't get to Friday any quicker. Everything is set up on this calendar and time frame that's going to do its thing. I can't change it. So why worry about Friday when I haven't even finished Wednesday yet? So I think we have a tendency to get ahead of ourselves. I asked a client of mine one time, he's one of the top financial advisors in the world. I've coached him for 7 years. He's probably in the top 0.001% of advisors. Literally 7 years we've worked together. And I asked him one time, and he's given me permission to share this. I said, Claudio, what makes you great? It's one of my favorite questions to ask people. What makes you great? Because I want to learn. Just because he's hired me to coach him, I want to learn from you. And his answer was incredible. He said, Ben, he says, it doesn't matter what I sold yesterday. It doesn't matter what I think I'm going to sell tomorrow. If I don't do what I said I was going to do today, the amount of guilt that I live with is too much for me to handle. I'd rather just do the work. And to me, that answer is what embodies standard over feelings. So he's saying, I'm not going to allow my feelings, the good or the bad, to dictate how I show up. I have to do the work that I said I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And back to the burn, he is driven by the fact that he's first generation in the United States. His parents were immigrants. They came from Brazil. They left beautiful jobs in Brazil to have jobs that could barely pay the bills in the United States to provide him and his sister an opportunity. So his burn is, how could I not live to be the best every single day when my parents made this tremendous sacrifice? How could I not own this opportunity? And he has.
With the pandemic, that has caused so many people to reassess themselves. So many people have lost their jobs. So many people have, income has been reduced. Marriages has been whatever. I don't even want to say whatever wise. But at the same time, one of the key messages you always teach people is always audit your expectation. So look around yourself and see what works and what doesn't work. How, someone who's going through a difficult time right now will be asking themselves, how can they start to audit their expectation to be more realistic or more unrealistic in what they're looking to achieve?
Well, I think so much of that comes down to communication. And it's not just the communication with our loved ones, it's the communication that you have with yourself. People have to realize that there's communication you have with yourself. And so I always share with individuals, what comes out of your mouth goes into your ears. That's what you believe, and that's what drives your behavior. Mm-hmm. So if the communication that you're feeding yourself is falling less, than positive, right? If we're only focusing on the negative. In psychology, there's what's called expectancy theory. That which you focus on expands. If you focus on negative, you get more negative. If you focus on positive, you get more positive. So we have to communicate in a positive way with ourselves, but it's also in our communication. I mean, I know, my wife and I, we've been married 15 years in November of this year, November 6th. And, all of a sudden, COVID, we're together all the time, right? So it's like, makes things a little different. You're not used to that, right? So you got to communicate. So if your environment changes, you have to communicate. Maybe expectations change. But I think people have a tendency too often to give up too early, right? They give up rather than willing to put in the work. Sometimes we have to put in the work in our relationship. When we have to put in a little extra work, love and care with our children. We have to put in a little extra work with ourselves. But to just say, look at what's going on and throw our hands up in the air and wait on the sidelines to see what happens, how could we expect that much positive will come from waiting to just see what happens? We have to take action and we have to communicate.
Before I let you go, I've seen you share the stage with so many amazing people, and you've learned lots of lessons. Could you share with us some of the lessons you've learned from sharing these stages with world leaders?
Yeah, so I'll share one. Jerry Rice, who's one of the greatest football players to ever play, one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, greatest football players of all time. He and I shared the stage in Las Vegas a handful of years ago. And I remember before we took the stage, Jerry looks at me. I asked him the same question I asked Claudio. I said, Jerry, I said, what made you great? And he said, he answered with a statement, which is one of the most profound statements I've ever heard. He says, man, he goes, you know what I've never understood? How could somebody not give 100% when it's 100% their choice? And I thought, that might be one of the most simple yet profound statements. How could somebody not give 100% when it's 100% their choice? Another one of the great leaders I've been able to learn from is Coach Saban at Alabama. So it's been a blessing for me to work for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's the most storied college football program in the history of college football in the United States. Coach Saban's the all-time winningest coach, 7 championships. And there's a couple of things he always says to the players. If you were with me at practice on the sidelines, he'll say, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And what he tries to impart to the students, if you're lazy about going to class, you're going to be lazy at practice. If you're lazy about how you eat, you're going to be lazy at how you work in the weight room. And those are life lessons that he's teaching, right? And that's what I admire about Coach Saban, is his leadership. Yes, he's coaching football, but he's teaching guys life lessons, right? He's teaching them really what he's saying is, because he's talking about football, but he's saying when you grow up, like if you don't make your bed in the morning, you're probably going to do something else sloppy during the day, right? So the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And then he also says that we don't do things until we get them right. We do things until we can't get them wrong. And I think so oftentimes somebody shares a lesson with you and you say, I got it. And like they just taught you, you haven't even tried it, and you're going to act like you know how to do it. When the reality is, for us to feel comfortable and for it to be something that we excel at, you may have to repeat that action step 1,000 times, maybe even 10,000 times before we are actually comfortable to the point to where we can't get it wrong.
The way you do things says a lot about the way. That is incredible lessons, because a lot of us don't think about this, but the way you wake up in the morning, I always say to my kids, the way you wake up in the morning, what you do when you leave the house, how if you I don't make your bed, or how you make if you have your breakfast. If you're sloppy, I tend to think that sloppiness goes with you throughout the rest of the day. So I really agree with that, and I'm so glad you shared with us. Before I let you go, you talk about clarity, inconsistency, accountability. You know, on your page, you use these words very clearly. You're like, everything you do, you need a little bit of clarity. So someone who's starting a new business, what are the few things they need to know before going into that business?
Well, I think a lot of times when we talk about process, right? So we say attack the process. Process is one thing. I don't want people to lose sight or think that what I'm saying is just show up and work hard every day. So I think we have to have clarity of exactly where it is that we want to go. but we can't have clarity and just have wishful thinking, right? I can see the vision. This is where I want to go. And then just expect you wake up and it happens. You have to have clarity, but then we pull it down in front of our face. We identify the process, and then you have to drive that personal accountability. If you want it bad enough and you connect to that burn inside of you, the self-accountability, the highest performers, they oftentimes don't need, maybe they need some reminders, but they're accountable to themselves. They know what they need to do and they're going to do it. Like, just like Claudio, he knows what he needs. So he had clarity and vision, but he had a willingness and accountability to do the work. And then I would leave everybody with that not being seduced by success. Measure yourself in your life based upon your effort. And I think far too often people measure how they feel based upon their results. Oh, this was a great month. We won the game. If I could encourage anybody for anything, and I learned this from my mom, having to embrace that the only day we have is this one, and it's a gift. So I'm going to live it to them. I would love for everybody, just look in the mirror at the end of the day and learn to live in such a way where you ask yourself, did I give it my very best? And if you can be honest with yourself on a daily basis, I gave it my very best today. Not tell fibs to yourself, no lies to yourself, but honestly tell yourself, I gave it my very best. Then you can never ask any more of yourself than giving it your very best. And nobody can ever ask any more of you than your very best. And to me, that's winning in life. And so I hope those lessons help. They're things that I live by because I've been blessed to be surrounded by great coaches and mentors who keep teaching me these things. So if you have me on again, I'll probably have more to share. This has been a lot of fun.
I definitely, when your book comes out, I would definitely like to read it, and we should have a discussion about it, because I'm really glad. The reason I enjoy talking to you, Ben, is that I'm a person, probably because of my chronic illness, I like to talk about success, but I don't like to talk about every day. You know, we hear so many people, when they talk about success, they talk about money, 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 money. And I always think money is great, money is good. But what you did that was so fascinating for me, and what I totally enjoy for someone with a chronic illness, we like to also see we're making change. You didn't just talk about making financial change. You talked about all kinds of things, looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing what you could have done differently, what you can improve on for yourself. If it's financial, if it's marriage, if it's this, whatever it is, but looking yourself in the mirror and see what you improve. And I love that fact, because that for me is what life is truly, what is life is all about. Because that pressure that some people put on other people, oh, you can make this money, you could do this, great. But some people, just because of their sheer, like your mother, I think your compassion came from your mother, and the way you teach gives that compassion to anyone listening. It doesn't matter what they're going through, feels that courage, I feel the need. I can make me a better person. And I think that's what I enjoyed about our conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being an amazing example for your kids and for all of us, that you can choose to keep a smile like that on your face through your pain and through your challenge, and be an example through all the interviews and the energy you put into the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, and I wish you well. Speak to you soon.